Hi, welcome to The Pursuit of Truth. It is still the 3rd of July 2018, and just picking up from YouTube, I was listening to Subtle Infinity. Why can't I say that word properly? Subtle Infinity. There you go, got there in the end. He played a clip from Alan Watts, and he was talking about this concept of well, it was a few concepts, but one of them was that all of us are God, which I thought was an interesting concept in the sense that because Down Beyond the Imaginary Curve was reading from the Old Testament, and he was reading from Genesis, and there's a verse where, obviously there's the most famous verse, that God created us in His image, and it refers to God in the plural as us. And so, you know, when I was listening to both of those YouTube videos, it was interesting to think that that this Alan Watts, he has a point here. This concept of us being God, because God did create us in His image, and He is God. So, are we gods then? Now, I suppose it depends how you read that, isn't it? I mean, I guess in some ways, maybe what is meant by that is to do with creation. What makes God God is that He created everything. I mean, that's one of His accolades, isn't it? And we have that ability too, in the sense that we create the future progeny, which we're ordered to do. So maybe that is the aspect of creating us in His image. But the thing is, the problem is like I've been talking before, all of the way we think is based on the way we've been taught. So we can only think in that framework. It's difficult to remap your mind, because it's already been mapped by how to think and how we see things. Even if we have alternative thoughts, the way we reason, it's been taught, hasn't it? So can we see things differently? That's why we have, trouble when it comes to people coming up with alternative theories, that people struggle to get their head around it and just leave it, because it's difficult to realise that we've all been taught, we've all been programmed, as it were, to see things and think things in a certain way through repetition, through schooling, through television. There's, for years is done, and not, in malice. Some of it may be done to keep us in a certain way, but a lot of it is done out of love, out of, that you want to pass on your knowledge, your way of thinking to your children. But of course, then when someone comes up with an alternative idea, then obviously everyone says, oh no, it can't be that. Because the thing is, we don't realise that reality that we see is a concept, is something that has been invented. Not reality in the sense that a tree is there, but I mean in the sense that what we call a tree, how we see things, the fact that we work for money, the fact that we all want to buy a house to live in, purchase, that the things that we do, how we perceive our existence. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. But it could be completely different in the sense where I mentioned in the last podcast, like if you, as a child, it was been left out in the wild, it would have a different existence, a different reality. Some things would be exactly the same. They have to eat, they have to drink, they have to breathe. All those things would be exactly the same. But that child may not speak, or may speak in a different way. It won't speak in the language that we speak. It may interact differently with animals than we do. It may not be scared of animals like we are. It may have bonded with them because or it may have been looked after by them. So, which is right? Well, I suppose you could say neither, because they're all, I was going to say constructed, but I suppose the one in the wild is probably closer to reality, because, well, I suppose it's not, because the thing is humans have other humans and they raise them like other animals raise other animals. But do you see what I'm trying to say, in the sense that you could have two different scenarios, two different individuals born on the same place in the same time, but with different, completely different understandings of what is. Yeah, what is. It doesn't sound right, but that's exactly what I mean. What is, what everything is, their perception, their reality, their existence. It doesn't make it any more right than the other, just because we accept the one that we're living here as being, you know, the right way to live. Is this that's what I'm trying to say, is that when I talk about these things, it's like, you know, we made choices. It's like a game. We're playing the game of life, or we're playing the game of Monopoly, or we could play a game of Scrabble. You know, it depends which game we're playing. You know, they're all good games, but we can change these things. We can live a different way if we choose, or if we all choose, or those with power choose for us. That's the problem, isn't it? If they want us to live a certain way, as things have changed throughout generations, but they don't tend to turn out best for us. So yeah, it was interesting when Alan Watts was talking about this idea of us being God. What if that was true, that concept? And I was thinking about that, you know, well, yeah, it's possible, isn't it? What if, you know, we were born and we were meant to be like God? We weren't meant to just waste our lives away watching television or you know, reading newspapers, or manufacturing all the cars and TVs and fridges and all the things that we do. What if our existence was meant to be different? What if there is a capacity that we have that is God-like, that we've lost because we're not training it? You see, it sounds crazy when you think about it, but maybe it's not. We all know that our brains use only a few percentage, and we don't know what the rest of it does. And we know ourselves that the same with, you've got this wild child, it won't be able to talk, it won't be able to communicate, it won't be able to do things unless it's taught. Whereas a child that's brought up in a like here will be able to use all those functions of their brain. Maybe they'll be able to write stories or be creative, you know, whereas the child that's left without these devices will not be able to do that. So that's to do with how we're taught then, isn't it? It's not something intrinsic. They both have the same brain, it's just the way it's taught. So what if we've lost other bits that we should have taught? What if we are all godlike? What if we have, I was going to say powers as a loaded word, but imagine if that is possible, if we could do things, that if we were taught how to do them, but we've lost that art. Because it's true, isn't it? If we did have if our brains had the function to will things into being, you know, to believe in something and make it happen by our brain waves, you know, because maybe we have that capacity. If we lose how, like, if I knew how to do it, but then I die and then I can't tell anyone and no one else knows, then no one else will know, will they? And that functionality will still be in our brain, but we won't be able to use it because we don't know about it. We've not been trained to. The same as the child that's left on its own without parents in the middle of the wild will not know how to speak English. It's interesting when you think about that, if you have an open mind. But what I mean, the thing that it's showing you is that the life we're living is just the life we're living. It may not be the way we're meant to live. It may not even be the right way to live. I'm sure there's most people, surely, with any sense, cannot say that the way we live is the best way we live, when we see all the suffering that happens and all the bickering and all the fighting and all the stupidity, you know, when it comes to governments, when it comes to worlds, when it comes to parliaments, when it comes to the fact that it takes hundreds of years for things to change. You know, look at how long it took slavery. If you think about how now we think about slavery, we think about it as being wrong and abhorrent and immoral. Whereas back in the day when, you know, if you've seen films about it, obviously I don't know how realistic those films are, but, you know, when they would go into Parliament and debate it, and they would all be against it except, say, one person, and they wouldn't be able to convince the rest of them. Well, how is it possible that they couldn't see, you know, that it was so wrong, so bad? Why were they blinded so much? And it's the same as now, when we look at things and we think, oh yeah, everything's fine and we're civilized and this is the best way and we're doing everything we possibly can do, and we've got charities and governments are giving money and helping other governments, and we're shaking hands and we're going to meet them and we're at peace, you know, and we're, you know, and everything's fine, but we're blinded the same way as those people when it came to slavery were blinded then. We just don't know that we are until someone comes up to you and says, like maybe I'm saying, you know, this way we're living is not the best way to be living. We shouldn't be living this way. What we're going to do about it? And 100 people will say, no, you're wrong, and laugh at you and say, there's nothing you can do anyway, or there's what better way could we live? Maybe this is a problem with humanity in the sense that we can only see through our time, through our own eyes. Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is, but anyway, it was an interesting subject, but it just goes to, I think, it was interesting to see both Dow and Sussel talking about these, the concept of, you know, of God being us, as showing that there could be a different way of living, a different reality. Because I think it was Alan Watts or Sutter, I can't remember which one, talked about it now. I think it was Alan Watts, when he was talking about how it was dealt with, that the Jews dealt with it one way in the sense that they denied Jesus, who claimed to be the Son of God, isn't it? Who came to be godlike. So that, and then the Christians, their way of handling it was making out that it was a one-off and there can only be Jesus, Son of God. He's only him, no one else. But it was interesting where they were, like, I think Sutton was trying to implicate that, what if that was a lie and that we all could be godlike, and that was just their way of controlling us and making us not think that we could be godlike by making out there's just one of us and not all of us that could have this capacity. But then it was interesting how today that Dow, I listened to his YouTube, I think it was from yesterday, where he was reading from the Bible, and it said that God created us in his image, and then it carries on and it mentions more about Adam and Eve and the plurality of God, because God talks about himself as we, as if he has more than one facet. I mean, I was thinking about that as well, to be honest, recently, is that even we the way we see ourselves is as if we're one. I am I, but we're not really. We're a collection. So maybe we are godlike in that way. You know, we think about ourselves as, you know, there's just one person, one mind, one soul. And then when people talk to themselves or hear voices, we say they're crazy. But all of us have that capacity where we communicate to ourselves, where, you know, not like we're hearing voices and they're telling us what to do, but the fact that we daydream or we think about things, or, you know, we have different personality. You know, I'm not talking about split personality, but we do have different sides of ourselves. We have, you know, our brain has different functions, so we are more than one. I think the way we see ourselves is wrong. So I think we are we as well. So maybe that's another match to how we are like God, that we're creating His image, that we are we as well. And we only believe that we're I because that's the way we're taught. But just because we're taught that's what I'm trying to say, is the way we're taught doesn't necessarily mean it's right. It's just the way we're taught. It's like a program or a code. It's only that. It can be adapted, it can be changed, it can even be wrong, and it can be corrected. So, because like I was saying before, I think I was talking about where, where people will do something that they don't, and then afterwards they regret it, and it's like almost as if there is two sides of you. Why is it when you want to, I think it was in one of my poems, like Who Created My Mind or something like that, where you want to change something about yourself and you find it difficult to, or you change it for a little bit and then you fall back into it. Why do you have that process if you're just one? And we know our brain has different sides and different functions and different parts that control different things. So I think we are a collective as well. The thing is, we shouldn't ever believe that we know everything or we know anything, because all we know is what people in the past have taught us and they believe to be true. But they may be wrong. We all may be wrong. There may be more to discover about ourselves. And the way our thought process and the way our reality is mapped out for us may not be right. And of course, if it is mapped out in that certain way, then you will play life in that way. Same as like we've got the wild child and you've got me here. We're the same. We're in the same time, same existence, but we have different perceptions because of environment. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough. Take care, take it easy. God bless and peace.